Julia Wolfe often refers to riSE and fLY as a body concerto or a concerto for body percussion. So, what's a concerto? Well, originally the word just meant a piece for singer and instruments, but by the Baroque period, which was 1650 to 1750, it was becoming fixed as a piece for soloist or soloists and orchestra. There were two types of concerto back then, the solo concerto and the concerto grosso. One of the most famous sets of solo concerto from that period were Vivaldi's Four Seasons. They all feature one soloist, a violinist, and an accompanying orchestra. A concerto grosso was a piece with a group of soloists rather than just one. These were very popular during the Baroque period, but then fell out of fashion as the solo concerto took over. Concertos have been written continuously ever since they were invented and are still a popular form of orchestral music, allowing one often famous soloist to show off at the front in solo spot and relegating the rest of the orchestra to the position of glamorous backup band. In the classical period, that's Mozart, Haydn and Beethoven's time, concertos became fixed at three movements, often fast, slow and fast again. Tunes were often introduced by the orchestra and then copied by the soloist, with lots of back and forth interplay throughout. As we move into the Romantic period, which spanned the 19th century, the piano became the most popular instrument to write a concerto for, and pieces got longer and more difficult as superstar pianists began to emerge, become famous and tour Europe. By the 20th century, composers started to break the rules and the concerto form became much freer. Wolfe's piece doesn't really follow any of the traditional structural rules at all. It's one through composed movement rather than three. Through composed just means it isn't divided into defined sections, so there's no fast, slow, fast. And obviously because of the nature of the solo instrument, very few musical ideas are passed around between the soloist and the orchestra. One rule Julia Wolfe does stick with is the cadenza. A cadenza is a passage within a concerto where the soloist plays totally alone and is allowed to really show off their skills. Originally, the cadenza was placed at the cadence, so that's the two chords that come at the end of a section. And it had the same function, albeit being much more glamorous. Cadenzas were often invented or improvised on the spot by the player. The cadenza in this piece is neither of these things. It doesn't include a cadence, the harmony of Julia's music doesn't work like that, and it isn't improvised. It does come towards the end of the first part of the piece, so it's roughly in the correct position, and instead of being improvised, it is incredibly meticulously notated using Julia's own system, and then learnt by Colin and performed exactly as written. But these two things don't make it any less special or amazing than a traditional classical cadenza. It serves the same essential function of giving the soloist a moment to show off. The posh word for that is to be virtuosic, and it gives us an amazing moment to enjoy. So here's just a bit of it now.